You never expect to find a miracle in the middle of a storm. But that winter, on the edge of the Glacier Crest Wilderness, the wind howled so hard it felt like it could rip the world apart. The snow was coming down sideways, swallowing the landscape in a thick, icy white haze. Every tree, every rock, even the river below the ridge, was nothing but a vague memory under all that snow. Out there, nothing moved. At least, nothing that wanted to live. But then, from the swirling white, something small appeared. At first it was just a shadow, barely more than a smudge against the snow. Then 2 trembling ears, a tiny Mustang foal, ribs showing beneath his dull winter coat, staggered through the whiteout. One slow, exhausted step at a time. Frost clung to his eyelashes, turning his eyes into pale silver marbles. His hooves cracked with every step, sinking too deep into the crusted snow. Up on the ridge above, Ranger Cole Bennett scanned the endless white through fogged-up binoculars, boots planted deep in the drift. He had seen a lot in his years patrolling these mountains, but nothing like this. He was used to looking for lost hikers, avalanche survivors, sometimes even old-timers who'd had too much to drink and wandered too far from their cabins. But a lone foal, out here, with no herd, no shelter, nothing but miles of wind and ice. That was impossible, Cole muttered. Where the hell did you come from, little guy? His voice vanished in the storm, lost before it even reached his own ears. He took a careful step down the slope, feeling his own heart thumping with every crunch of snow. The foal lifted its head, staring straight at Cole with eyes too wide, too desperate for anything out here to survive. For a second, Cole saw something in those eyes, something old, wild, and stubborn. A refusal to give in to the storm. Cole's first instinct was to get the foal out of there. He reached for the rope at his belt, careful, slow, trying not to spook the little Mustang. But as he took another step, the foal did something strange. He turned away, just a little, and looked back over his shoulder. Not a panicked run, not even a flinch. It was like he wanted Cole to follow. Cole hesitated. You want me to come with you? Another gust ripped through the trees, flinging ice like shrapnel. The foal started walking again, awkward, stumbling, but determined. Every few steps he'd stop and look back, waiting just long enough to make sure Cole kept moving. For a moment, Cole remembered the first time he'd ever gone into the backcountry with his little brother, Jason. Jason had been wild for animals, always convinced he could spot a deer where nobody else could. He'd stop, wait for Cole to keep up, and then dart ahead again. Cole swallowed hard and pushed the memory down. The foal disappeared behind a snow-laden log, then reappeared, fighting the wind. Cole followed, down the slope, across a frozen stream, past a stand of battered pine trees bowing beneath their icy load. Every muscle in his legs burned from breaking trail, but he couldn't stop. There was something about the foal's insistence. The way he moved with just enough hope to believe he might find something better up ahead. Come on, little guy. Just a little further, Cole called. Though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the foal or himself. A branch snapped in the wind, and for a heartbeat, Cole thought he saw another shadow in the white. He tightened his grip on his radio. But the only answer was the whine of the wind and the distant whicker of the foal. As the minutes crawled by, Cole found himself losing track of everything except the rhythm of following the tiny prints in the snow. The foal's tracks zigzagged between drifts, sometimes sinking in so deep that only the tips of his little hooves showed above the powder. Once, the foal stopped and shivered so hard he nearly fell over, and Cole's chest tightened. If this went on much longer, neither of them would make it. But every time Cole slowed down, the foal would give him that look, almost a dare, almost a plea, and then keep moving forward. The snow grew thicker, so heavy that even the sun vanished, leaving only a dull gray light that seemed to press down on everything. Cole's breath iced on his collar. He wondered, not for the first time, if this was the kind of storm you just didn't walk away from. Then the foal stopped, just ahead, at the edge of a small rise. His legs trembled, but he held his ground. Cole staggered up behind him, breath coming in ragged gasps, and looked out over the ridge. Down below, the snow was drifted higher, whipped into strange shapes by the wind. In the middle of it all, A long, low mound rose from the ground, almost hidden by the white. The foal walked to the mound, paused, and pressed his little nose against it. Cole blinked, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The mound shifted. Not much, but enough. The foal looked back, straight into Cole's eyes, and suddenly Cole understood. He wasn't just lost. He wasn't just wandering. He was leading Cole somewhere important. Cole took one shaky step forward, feeling the weight of the storm all around him. In that moment, with the snow swirling and the world stripped down to white and gray in the thundering pulse of his own heart, Cole realized he wasn't alone out here after all. Voiceover. He could barely walk, but somehow he knew where to go. Montana's Glacier Crest wilderness wasn't just cold. It was haunted, at least to those who knew how to listen. As Cole knelt by the shifting snow mound, hands trembling in his thick gloves, the storm seemed to pause. The foal pressed close to the mound, his whole small body vibrating with a need Cole could feel in his own bones. That's when the memories surged, unwelcome, sharp as the wind. Cole Bennett hadn't always been alone out here. 2 winters ago, he'd never have imagined himself trailing a half-frozen Mustang foal through a blizzard. Back then, he was the one who led. Back then, it had been Cole and his younger brother, Jason, side by side. Partners in the search and rescue team, always pushing deeper into the wilds. They'd known every trick the mountains could play, every place where danger waited, every shortcut home. But memory is a tricky thing. It comes when you least want it. Cole saw Jason's face now, rounder than his own, always with a goofy grin, eyes full of stubborn hope, even on the hardest days. He remembered their last mission together, hunting for a lost snowmobiler near the edge of Crow's Ridge. The blizzard had come up out of nowhere. Jason had insisted on taking the higher route, said he felt something up there. Cole had hesitated just for a second. That second still lived in him like a splinter under the skin. Now, in the present, Cole shook himself back to reality, forcing his attention to the foal in the mound beneath the snow. He unzipped his pack, pulling out a small, collapsible shovel. The wind howled, threatening to tear the tool from his numb fingers. The foal watched every move, never more than a few steps away, those pale eyes huge and anxious. Cole worked quickly, methodically, his years of training keeping panic at bay. The snow was packed hard, full of icy crusts. Each scoop revealed more, first a patch of dark, sweat-matted fur, then the gentle rise and fall of breath so shallow Cole thought he was imagining it. His own breath hitched. Easy. It's okay. I'm here, he whispered, the words sounding foolish even to himself. Cole's hands found a twisted hind leg, half buried, cold to the touch. He cleared more snow, revealing the outline of a Mustang mare, barely alive. Her nostrils flared once, then again, so slight he wondered if he'd missed it. The foal pushed forward, nuzzling the mare's face, making a small, desperate sound that cut right through Cole's defenses. She didn't come for help, Cole muttered, staring at the foal. He came to bring it to her. As the storm shrieked, another memory flashed. Jason, crouched by an avalanche victim, hands gentle, voice steady, even when everything looked lost. You never know, Cole, Jason had said once. Sometimes the wild things have more fight in them than you think. Cole blinked away the sting in his eyes. He checked the mare's pulse. Weak, but there. Her flanks trembled, muscles stiff. He had to act, and fast. He radioed in, static, nearly drowning out his words. Dispatch, this is Ranger Bennett, Glacier Crest. Got 2 Mustangs, 1 mare, severe hypothermia. I need a rescue team. Coordinates incoming. Oh, over. Only static answered. He tried again. The storm made a joke of his signal. Damn it. Cole weighed his options. He could drag the foal back with him, leave the mare behind, or stay, risk both their lives on a maybe. The answer should have been obvious. No one would fault him for saving the one he could. But the foal's eyes held him. They were wild and pleading, stubborn as Jason's had ever been. He remembered how Jason had died, buried under tons of snow, just out of Cole's reach. Sometimes Cole woke up in the night, feeling the weight of that snow on his own chest, crushing and cold. And he'd think, if only I'd gotten there sooner. If only I'd believed. Out in the blizzard, Cole made his choice. He pulled a tarp from his pack, using it to block some of the wind around the mare. He wrapped his own jacket around her thick neck, pressing heat packs, usually meant for frozen hikers, against her chest and belly. Every few minutes, he'd pour a trickle of water from his thermos lid into her mouth, careful not to drown her, murmuring quiet encouragement. The foal, exhausted, curled up beside her, sharing what little warmth he had left. Cole glanced at the little Mustang, his own thoughts spinning. Why was this foal alone out here? Where was the herd? What had happened? He looked over the storm-blasted landscape and saw only emptiness. No tracks, no movement, just endless white. His thoughts drifted again, back to the weeks after Jason's death. Cole had shut down. He'd stopped riding out with the team, preferring solo patrols, never trusting anyone to watch his back or share the weight. Friends called, texted, left voicemails he never answered. Even his parents couldn't get through. "You can't keep blaming yourself, Cole," his father said once, voice brittle with pain. "Accidents happen." But Cole didn't believe in accidents. He believed in mistakes and in consequences. Here, in the wilderness, he'd found a kind of peace. The cold stripped everything away. Out here, you didn't have to talk. You just had to survive. But tonight, something was different. Watching the foal refuse to leave his mother, Cole felt the old ache in his chest loosen just a little. Maybe there were still things worth fighting for, even if they couldn't be saved. He worked through the night, fighting back the urge to give up. As the temperature plummeted, he checked the mare's breathing every half hour, massaged her stiff limbs, fed the foal bits of trail mix from his own pocket, just enough to keep the fire in his eyes alive. At one point, the wind died for a moment, and everything went strangely quiet. Cole looked up at the sky, where the clouds had broken just enough to show a few pale stars. He wondered if Jason was up there somewhere, watching, shaking his head at his stubborn big brother. "You'd call me crazy, wouldn't you?" Cole whispered, a ghost of a smile on his face. "But I'm not leaving them behind." A sudden movement brought his attention back. The foal stood, stamping his feet, nuzzling the mare again, refusing to give up. Cole felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. As the hours dragged on, Cole felt exhaustion closing in, but every time he thought of stopping, of leaving, he remembered Jason's words. "Sometimes the wild things have more fight in them than you think." So, Cole stayed. His past and present tangled together, his ghost pressing close as the storm raged outside. And as the first pale light of dawn bled into the sky, Cole realized that sometimes the only way to outrun your ghosts is to stop running and fight for something, even when it seems impossible. The night bled into morning without a hint of mercy. The wind clawed at Cole Bennett's back, the kind that slices right through layers of canvas and wool, whispering that it could always get colder. The makeshift shelter he'd built barely kept the worst of the snow off the mare and her foal. He watched the sky lighten behind gray clouds, each minute stretching into forever, his body aching in a dozen places he'd forgotten could ache. The foal, exhausted but unwilling to let go, pressed himself against the mare. When the wind howled fiercest, he'd nuzzle her cheek, sometimes even try to crawl beneath her limp foreleg, as if to become her shadow. Cole saw that stubborn spark, hope against logic, and it hurt more than his frozen hands. The radio at his hip sputtered uselessly with static, every rescue call fading into the storm. He checked the mare's pulse, weak but there, and looked into the foal's eyes, seeing a quiet courage, something he wished he still carried himself. With the first pale light, Cole forced himself to stand, legs protesting every move. He scanned the horizon, nothing but white on white, the pines stooped low, frost painting the bark. The world was silent, save for the wind's endless song. Still, he had to move. The storm had eased only a little, but if they were going to make it, he'd need to find better shelter and signal for help again. Cole unwrapped his jacket from the mare and draped it around his own shoulders, shivering at the loss of warmth. He eyed the foal. "You've got more fight in you than most grown men I know," he said softly. The foal responded with a look that almost seemed to say, "And I'm not done yet." With gentle hands, Cole tested the mare's legs. Her back leg was badly twisted, probably from a desperate fall or a misstep in the blizzard. He couldn't move her far, not like this. But the foal, after a final nuzzle, took a hesitant step away from the shelter, paused, and looked back at Cole, eyes wide and shining with urgency. "Hey, what is it?" Cole said, squinting through the blowing snow. The foal took another step, paused, then waited again. There was a purpose in every motion, a sense of direction, a silent command. Cole's breath caught. This wasn't just wandering. Reluctant, but with no better plan, Cole followed. Each step away from the makeshift shelter tugged at his heart. He scanned the white wilderness for danger, every shadow a possible threat. But the foal seemed sure. Every few steps he stopped, glanced back, making sure Cole was still following. The trust between them, thin as it was, felt like a lifeline in all that emptiness. Cole moved with careful urgency, eyes never leaving the foal's tracks. The crust of snow was uneven and treacherous, cracking beneath his boots. The foal's tiny hooves punched through the top layer, legs trembling with fatigue, but he pressed on. Sometimes the wind nearly knocked him over, but he righted himself and kept going. They passed the battered trunks of ancient pines, branches heavy with snow. Once Cole heard the distant cry of a raven, a sound that seemed to belong to another world. Here, in this wasteland, every sound echoed with loneliness. The foal's breaths came ragged and visible, misting in the frigid air. Halfway down a narrow ravine, Cole paused to catch his breath. The foal, shivering, waited. It struck Cole then just how unlikely all this was. Two lost souls, a man burdened with grief, and a foal, driven by instinct, moving together through a landscape that wanted them both gone. Cole found himself talking aloud, as much to fill the silence as to keep his focus. "You know, my brother always said wild horses knew things people didn't. I thought he was crazy. Maybe he was right." His voice trailed off, caught by the wind. The foal stumbled, falling to its knees. Cole's heart lurched. He rushed over, knelt beside him, and gently lifted the foal to its feet. "Easy there, bud. You can do this. We both can." The foal leaned against him for a moment, drawing from his warmth, and then took another shaky step forward. The terrain grew rougher. Snow had drifted into odd mounds, some hiding rocks, others just traps for the unwary. Cole stepped carefully, using his walking stick to test the ground ahead. The foal followed, never straying too far. A few times Cole considered turning back. His body screamed for rest. His mind whispered that he was risking everything for a hopeless cause. But the foal's resolve, so raw, so pure, was impossible to ignore. As they crested a small rise, the wind shifted, carrying with it a new sound, a muffled groan, barely more than a whisper. Cole froze. The foal's ears pricked, and he moved with new urgency, slipping down the far side of the drift. There, nestled in a shallow hollow, was another snow-covered mound. It looked like just another drift, except it moved, and Cole's adrenaline surged. He hurried down, careful not to startle the foal. The little mustang pawed at the snow, revealing the shape beneath. A dark patch of fur, a leg, a flicker of breath. Cole dropped to his knees, heart hammering. He cleared snow with his gloved hands, revealing more of the body. A mustang mare, battered, half-buried, and barely alive. Ice clung to her flanks, breath coming in thin, uneven gasps. The foal whickered, low and desperate, and nudged her face. The mare didn't respond at first. For a moment, Cole feared she was already gone. But then, a flutter of an eyelid, the tiniest movement of an ear. She was alive, but only just. Cole felt the world tilt. This was what the foal had been leading him toward, his mother, still fighting beneath the snow, refusing to give in. Cole swallowed hard, memories of his brother flooding back, the endless search for someone you love, the agony of almost losing hope. He bent close, voice gentle but urgent. "Hang on, girl. We've got you." He checked her vitals as best he could. Her leg was twisted under her, probably broken or badly sprained. Her pulse was there, weak but fighting. He dug out the last of his emergency heat packs and pressed them to her belly and chest, working fast, hands numb and clumsy with cold. The foal pressed close, nuzzling, refusing to leave her side. Cole watched this display of pure loyalty, feeling a lump in his throat he couldn't swallow down. He'd seen men freeze out here. Men with all the gear in the world. This mare had nothing but a baby who refused to give up. "Didn't come for help," Cole whispered, voice cracking. He came to bring it to her. He realized then what was at stake. It wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about refusing to let go, even when the world told you to give up, even when everyone else had left. As the blizzard began to die, Cole looked at the foal, small, shivering, but unbroken, and felt, for the first time in a long while, that maybe hope wasn't so foolish after all. Cole's hands shook as he clawed away the crusted snow, desperate to reach more than just another body lost to the wild. His breath puffed in shallow bursts, fogging the air between him and the battered Mustang mare. The foal pressed so close to his mother that Cole had to nudge him gently aside. He resisted, panic flashing in his eyes. But Cole's touch was careful, reassuring. There was a moment when it all felt surreal. The storm easing, dawn's gray light seeping across the endless snowfields, and three souls, man, mare, and foal, stranded together on the frozen ground. The only warmth came from the fire burning in their chests. Love, stubbornness, survival. Cole whispered, "Easy now. We're here. Stay with me." As Cole cleared away the last drift, the full extent of the mare's suffering became clear. Her legs were tangled awkwardly beneath her, one twisted at an unnatural angle, muscles tensed in agony. Ice glazed her flanks, fur matted with sweat and blood. Her breaths came in shallow, rattling bursts, nostrils crusted with frost. Cole pressed his fingers against her jugular, feeling the weak, uneven flutter of her pulse. He saw her ear twitch, so slight it could have been a trick of the wind. The foal nickered softly, nudging her cheek. Cole swallowed hard. He'd seen horses in bad shape before. But something about this one, she wasn't just surviving. She was holding on for him. He remembered the lessons from his years in search and rescue. You're never just saving the victim. You're saving the ones who love them too. He moved with purpose, pulling off his gloves and placing his bare palm against her neck. Her skin was shockingly cold. He worked methodically, checking her airways, looking for any sign of internal bleeding. He knew there wasn't much he could do without real medical gear, but he had to try. Cole glanced at the foal, his eyes huge, reflecting every pain his mother felt. The loyalty cut deeper than any blizzard wind. Cole recognized it instantly. It was the same kind of devotion that had driven him out here, night after night, even after Jason was gone. The radio crackled uselessly at his hip. No rescue, no backup, just the howling wind and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He could almost hear Jason's voice, half mocking, half hopeful. "Don't leave anyone behind, Cole." "Not even yourself?" He had to act, and fast. First, he built a rough windbreak using pine branches, rocks, and whatever he could find, angling his own body to shield the mare from the relentless gusts. Then he pulled out the emergency thermal blanket from his pack, spreading it over her torso and tucking it gently beneath her. It wouldn't fix the cold, but maybe it could buy them time. He unzipped his own jacket, ignoring the shock of cold that bit into his skin, and wrapped it around the mare's neck. The heat packs, precious as gold out here, he pressed between her forelegs and under her belly. He poured lukewarm water from his thermos lid, dribbling it into her mouth, hoping she'd swallow. At first there was nothing, then the tiniest flicker of her tongue. Hope, fragile as glass, flickered in his chest. The foal didn't move from her side, even when Cole's cold hands brushed him. Instead, He pressed his small, shaking body against her, sharing whatever little warmth he had left. Cole found himself murmuring encouragement to both of them, voice raw but steady. "Come on, Mama. Hang in there. You're not done yet." The blizzard had passed, but the cold lingered. The world was deathly quiet. Cole's breath sounded impossibly loud. He looked around at the emptiness. No sign of the herd, no tracks but their own. He wondered what had driven them out, what accident or panic had scattered the horses and left this mother and foal alone in the wild. The odds were stacked against them, he knew that too well. But still, the mare fought for every breath. Still, the foal refused to leave. Cole's mind wandered, unbidden, to those first weeks after Jason died, how every sound at night would set his heart racing, how every patrol felt haunted, the echo of Jason's laughter and stubborn courage ringing through the trees. There had been days he almost wished he could forget, but something always pulled him back. Duty, maybe, or hope, or just not knowing how to let go. Tonight, though, he wasn't thinking about letting go. He was thinking about how not to lose again. He worked his frozen fingers over the mare's twisted leg, searching for signs of a break. Swelling, but no sharp bone edges, maybe a bad sprain, maybe worse, but not hopeless. He checked her breathing, watched the fog of each exhale, measured her pulse again, willing it stronger. Minutes crawled by. The foal, eyes never leaving his mother, began to shiver violently, his legs nearly buckling with exhaustion. Cole took off his own scarf, wrapped it around the foal's neck, and held him steady. "You're a stubborn little guy," Cole whispered. "You remind me of someone I knew." The cold seeped deeper, numbing his limbs, threatening to dull his senses. Cole forced himself to stay alert, to keep moving, to keep doing something, anything, against the rising tide of despair. The mare's ear flicked again. The foal whickered. Cole felt a surge of defiant hope. He looked up at the sky, now a faint pale blue as dawn struggled to assert itself. He thought of every person he'd ever tried to save, every failure, and every miracle. He thought of Jason, of promises made and broken, of the difference between leaving and staying. Kneeling in the snow, hands pressed against the battered, half-frozen body of a Mustang mare, Cole Bennett understood something he hadn't let himself believe in a long time. Sometimes, all you can do is stay. Sometimes, that's enough. He whispered, voice thick with emotion. He didn't come for help. He came to bring it to her. The foal pressed his head beneath his mother's chin, finding comfort in the place where love was stronger than the cold. Cole sat beside them, silent, shivering, and let the warmth of hope, however small, keep the blizzard at bay. Cole Bennett knelt beside the injured mare, his hands numb from both cold and the crushing weight of responsibility. All around him, the world was silent except for the faint shudder of wind brushing across the snow and the occasional whimper from the foal. The radio on his belt, usually a lifeline, spat nothing but static. He tried one more time. "Ranger Bennett to base. Come in. I have 2 Mustangs. One's critical, coordinates attached. Repeat. I need emergency extraction." His words vanished into the void. For a moment, all Cole could hear was his own ragged breathing. He stared at the mare, her flanks heaving in pain, her eyes dull but refusing to close. The foal, still pressed tight against her, let out a tiny, shivering nicker that sounded almost like a plea. Cole ran through his options. None of them good. He could carry the foal back to his patrol sled, try to save at least one life. But every inch of him recoiled at leaving the mare behind. He could stay and try to save them both. But with the storm returning and rescue uncertain, he'd be risking all 3 of their lives. Logic battled with the stubborn, aching hope in his chest. He closed his eyes, searching for clarity, but all he saw was Jason, his brother's stubborn face, the way he'd always fought to stay when others gave up. Cole's mind replayed the last avalanche rescue, how they'd risked everything for a man who never even made it out. Jason had looked at him, wind-chapped and wild-eyed, and said, "You don't get to quit, Cole, not when someone's counting on you." Those words echoed now, louder than the storm. Cole knew he couldn't abandon the mare. Not when she was still breathing, still fighting. He'd made a promise. To himself, to Jason, maybe to the world, that he wouldn't walk away. Not this time. He would make a stand, no matter the risk. He got to work. First, he reinforced the windbreak, bracing pine branches with rocks and snow, doing his best to turn the crude shelter into something that might hold through another night. He checked the thermal blanket and adjusted it so that it covered both the mare and the foal. Next, he wrapped his own jacket tighter around the mare's neck, pressing the last of his heated packs beneath her chest and belly, hoping to keep her core temperature from dropping any further. He poured water, little by little, into the mare's mouth, using his gloved hand to coax her to swallow. It was slow, painstaking work, but he wouldn't let himself hurry. One slip could drown her, and he'd seen too much loss already. After each sip, he paused, watching for any response. At last, the mare's tongue flicked. Then her throat convulsed with a shallow swallow. Relief swept over Cole, nearly buckling his knees. That's it, girl. Just a little more. The foal never left her side, pressing so close Cole could feel the little horse's warmth through the blanket. He spoke to them both, his voice barely above a whisper. You're the bravest things I've ever seen. We're in this together, all right? No one's leaving anybody behind. As daylight faded, the cold grew sharper, slicing at any exposed skin. Cole's teeth chattered. He forced himself to move, rubbing the mare's stiff muscles, trying to generate some circulation. He worked the foal's legs too, gently massaging each limb, feeling how dangerously close they both were to freezing. Cole checked the radio again. Still nothing but static. He calculated how long it might take a rescue team to get here, factoring in the storm, the terrain, the likelihood that his signal ever got through. Hours at best, maybe more. The odds felt impossible. But the will to fight, his, the mare's, the foal's, remained unbroken. As the afternoon bled into evening, Cole's thoughts circled back to Jason, to the unspoken promise he'd carried since that terrible avalanche. You don't get to quit. It wasn't just a memory. It was a command, one that lived in his bones. A new squall swept in as the sun slipped behind the mountains, flinging icy pellets against the tarpon branches. Cole hunched lower, drawing the edges of the shelter tight. He listened to the wind, to the mare's ragged breaths, and to the foal's whimpers. Despair tried to sneak in around the edges, whispering that it would be easier to just go, to take the foal and leave the dying mare to the elements. But he refused. He dug his boots into the snow, steeling himself. Time dragged. Cole checked the mare's pulse over and over, feeling for any change. There were moments when he thought she was slipping away, when her breaths grew so faint he feared the end had come. But then the foal would nuzzle her, and the mare would twitch, nostrils flaring in a stubborn refusal to let go. Cole's own body was nearly spent, but adrenaline and sheer determination kept him moving. He checked and rechecked their shelter, tightened the makeshift windbreak, and rationed his water and food. Tiny bites for himself, bits of grain and trail mix for the foal. He let the foal nibble from his palm, feeling the desperate softness of a creature who hadn't given up hope yet. The cold pressed in harder. Cole wondered if anyone at the ranger station would even get his message. He pictured the search party forming, headlights bobbing through the trees, but pushed the image away. It was too easy to hope for rescue and lose sight of what needed to be done right now. As the first stars pricked through the deepening twilight, Cole made it a vow not to let the darkness win. He talked to the mare, to the foal, to Jason's memory. We're not leaving anybody behind, not this time. He checked his watch. Hours to go until dawn. He'd face them, minute by minute, doing everything he could for these two lives the world had nearly forgotten. As the wind howled and the night closed in, Cole sat with his back to the freezing cold, keeping vigil for a mother and her child. Holding the line, not for glory or gratitude, but because somewhere, deep inside, hope still burned. And that lonely patch of wilderness, surrounded by nothing but snow and silence, Cole Bennett made the decision that would change them all. The cold pressed in from every angle, thick and relentless, like the weight of a world determined to smother any hope that flickered in that patch of Montana wilderness. Cole Bennett sat hunched inside the makeshift windbreak, knees drawn to his chest, feeling the frozen ground seep into his bones. His breath drifted in white plumes, rising above the silent forms of the injured Mustang mare and her foal, both pressed close together beneath the tattered tarp in his precious thermal blanket. As dusk surrendered to night, the landscape beyond their tiny sanctuary vanished into endless blue-black shadows. Wind rattled the pines and sent powder snow swirling, piling up in the corners of the shelter and threatening to undo every bit of work Cole had managed. He fought exhaustion, every muscle screaming for rest, but he refused to close his eyes. Not when so much still hung in the balance. The foal lay with his nose tucked against his mother's shoulder, breathing shallow and fast. Each time the mare shifted, even slightly, the foal nudged her, as if desperate to remind her he was there, that she was not allowed to slip away. Cole watched them with a mixture of awe and dread. He'd seen that kind of devotion before, in people, in animals, in the wild places where survival depended on loyalty and willpower. The hours crawled by, measured only by the rhythmic rise and fall of the mare's chest and the biting wind that never let up. Cole checked her pulse every 30 minutes, counting out the heartbeats with trembling fingers. Each time, the rhythm was weaker than before, and each time he pressed a little harder on the heat packs, whispered encouragement, or poured another dribble of water between her cracked lips. When her breath grew faint, Cole leaned in close, murmuring, "Come on, girl. Don't quit now. Your boy needs you. We're almost through." He didn't know if she heard him, but the foal seemed to. Whenever Cole's voice faded, the foal's ears flicked, and he pressed himself tighter to his mother's side, eyes wide and luminous in the faint light of Cole's headlamp. It was in these small hours, when the world narrowed to the radius of his own shaky flashlight, that Cole felt the full weight of his decision. Out here, miles from help, the world was stripped down to its most basic truths: life, death, and the stubborn will to hold on to both. Cole's thoughts drifted as his body tried to rest. He remembered nights on search and rescue, nights when hope seemed to die before dawn, when every shadow looked like the end. He remembered Jason, his voice low and confident as they sat around a campfire. "You just gotta wait out the dark. Cole, that's all the wild ever asks of you. Hang on until morning." How many times had he failed to listen? How many times had he been tempted to turn away? But not tonight. Tonight, he would not run. Sometime past midnight, the radio on his belt sputtered with a faint, distant voice. Maybe dispatch, maybe just another fragment of static. He tried again, voice hoarse. "Ranger Bennett to base. Still need extraction. Mare and foal critical coordinates unchanged. Over?" The only answer was the wind. The cold gnawed at him, seeping into his joints, stiffening his fingers. He stomped his boots and flexed his hands to keep blood flowing, but fatigue made it harder with every hour. He shared what little food he had left with the foal, letting the young Mustang nibble at oats and bits of apple. "Keep your strength up, buddy," he whispered. "She needs you. We all do." Outside, the wind began to howl with new intensity, rattling the branches of their shelter. The mare's breathing faltered, her sides trembling with the effort of every inhalation. Cole pressed his gloved hands to her neck, feeling the thready pulse of life slipping through his fingers. He tried to remember every trick he'd learned on the job. He swapped out heat packs, rubbed her legs, covered her eyes from the windburn, did everything he could to keep her from slipping into the cold's final embrace. The foal never left her side, refusing food and water except when she moved. It was a devotion that pierced Cole's chest like a blade, reminding him of all the times he'd failed, all the times he'd let someone down. He didn't want to let anyone down tonight. In the pitch-black stillness, time played tricks. Sometimes minutes felt like hours. Sometimes whole hours slipped by in the space of a heartbeat. Cole found himself talking to Jason, softly so the wind wouldn't hear. "Wish you could see this, man. This little guy's braver than either of us ever were. I keep thinking about that avalanche. How I left you for just a minute. Should have stayed. Should have fought harder. His voice cracked, raw with grief and guilt. The foal whinnied, so soft it was barely more than a breath. Cole reached out, brushing his hand along the foal's mane. You're doing good. Just a few more hours. Sun's coming. As the night wore on, Cole's exhaustion became surreal, dreams creeping into reality. He saw visions of his brother, standing at the tree line, arms crossed, smirking. You don't get to quit, Cole. That's not how you're wired. Cole almost laughed, except it hurt too much. A little before dawn, the wind began to die down. The temperature dropped even further, the coldest part of the night, when everything seemed at its most hopeless. Cole huddled closer to the horses, drawing his knees to his chest, fighting the urge to close his eyes. Just a little longer, he whispered to no one. And then, just as he felt his own strength failing, headlights shimmered across the snow, a faint, distant glow but growing. He sat up, heart pounding. The distant rumble of an engine carried through the cold, the rescue team, finally, dragging a trailer by Snowcat over the rough terrain. Cole staggered to his feet, waving his flashlight, calling out as the Snowcat approached. The vet and two rescuers jumped down, quick and efficient, working in practiced silence. They eased the mare onto a stretcher, loaded her into the trailer, then carried the foal, still clinging to her side, after her. Cole, refusing to be separated from them, climbed in too, despite the vet's protests. I'm staying right here, all night, if I have to. Inside the trailer, the world shrank again. There was nothing but the rasp of the mare's breath, the gentle trembling of the foal, and Cole, watching them with a vigil born of grief and stubborn love. The vet checked vitals, administered fluids, wrapped the mare's twisted leg in bandages and splints, and murmured, She may not last the night? Not even with help. But she's got more fight in her than most. Cole nodded, refusing to let himself hope too much, or give in to despair. There, in that cramped space, a ranger, a foal, a dying Mustang, they waited for dawn, for a miracle, for a reason to keep fighting. He whispered, voice rough with exhaustion, but thick with something deeper. I'd seen men freeze out here with gear and backup. She had nothing but a baby who refused to leave. And in that fragile darkness, as the Snowcat rattled its way down the mountain, Cole realized he'd found something worth saving. Not just in the horses, but in himself. Inside the dim, makeshift warmth of the trailer, time bent and buckled, becoming something strange and elastic. Cole Bennett sat wedged between two hay bales, jacket stripped off, trying to radiate every bit of body heat he could toward the battered Mustang mare and her foal, huddled together on the straw. He kept his hands on the foal's side, feeling the rhythmic shivering breaths, each inhale and exhale a tiny protest against the long frozen night. The rescue crew rode up front, just silhouettes beyond the thin metal partition, their voices muffled and careful, like people afraid to admit how fragile hope really was. The trailer rattled with every bump in the snow, lantern lights swaying above, throwing nervous shadows that flickered over the horses' faces. Cole watched the mare, counting each shallow rise and fall of her chest. The foal pressed against her, never asleep but not quite awake either. Eyes half-lidded, ears twitching at every new sound. A few times, the foal would nudge his mother's chin, a gentle push that looked like he was trying to lift her spirit by sheer force of will. Every time, the mare gave nothing, no flicker of her ear, no movement of her head, only that haunting, stubborn pulse beneath her skin. The vet checked vitals every half hour, moving with the quick confidence of a man who'd seen his share of close calls. He murmured stats to himself. Pulse, barely there. Temperature, still too low. Cole heard him, but refused to let any hint of defeat settle in. When the vet shook his head, Cole would meet his gaze, steady and defiant. She's made it this far, Cole said, voice hoarse. She's not giving up tonight. Outside, the night was absolute, the cold a living thing. It pressed against the thin walls, found every crack and seam. Cole's hands cramped from the chill, but he didn't care. He reached into his pack, found an extra shirt, and tucked it around the foal's shoulders. "Hold on, little guy," he whispered. "Just a little longer?" He thought about Jason, thought about all the nights he'd sat out in the dark, listening for something, anything that proved he wasn't alone in the world. Now, sitting in the gloom with these two survivors, Cole felt closer to his brother than he had in years. It was as if Jason's stubbornness was alive in this foal, in this mare, in the refusal to let winter have the final word. The hours dragged by. The vet handed Cole a cup of weak coffee. He sipped it, grateful for the heat, barely tasting it past the bitter chill in his mouth. The mare's breathing grew shallower still, and twice Cole thought he felt her pulse fade away, only for it to return, stubborn as the mountain itself. At last, the sky outside began to change. The pitch black, softening into a cold, gray haze. Cole's watch said it was nearly 6 a.m., though it felt like years since sunset. The vet leaned over, shining his flashlight on the mare's face. "You're still with us," he murmured, almost to himself. Cole leaned in, face close to the mare's, and whispered, "Dawn's here. Just hold on." He glanced at the foal, whose eyes seemed to search his own for answers. "She's gonna make it, buddy. She's gotta." The snowcat lurched to a stop. The trailer's doors swung open, and the freezing air bit deep. Two staff from the rehab center hustled over, carrying warm blankets and heating pads. They worked fast, guiding the stretcher out, with Cole, the foal, and the vet keeping close. They brought the mare inside, into a heated barn, soft straw and gentle hands waiting. The foal followed, eyes never leaving his mother, fighting every attempt to separate them. Inside, the world changed. Warmth, electric lights, the clean smell of disinfectant and hay. The vet and staff moved with new urgency, checking the mare's vitals, bandaging her leg, starting fluids, monitoring her breathing. Cole kept to the corner, arms folded, afraid to hope, afraid to give up. The hours passed. The barn was quieter than Cole expected, the world outside muffled by thick walls and piles of snow. The foal stood pressed to his mother, refusing food or water unless she stirred. Cole talked to them both, sometimes out loud, sometimes in his head. "You've come this far? You're safe now? We made it through the worst of it." At some point, Cole drifted into a fitful sleep on a pile of straw. He dreamed of blizzards and mountain trails, of Jason laughing, always just ahead, calling for him to hurry up. When he woke, it was to the soft, worried voices of the staff, and the sound of the foal pawing the ground, restless and anxious. The sky outside was turning pink and gold. Cole rubbed his eyes and stood, stretching his cramped legs, and moved quietly to the stall. The foal was standing with his muzzle tucked under the mare's chin. The mare's sides barely moved. The vet stood at her head, one hand resting gently on her brow. Cole held his breath. The light through the window hit the mare's face. Her eyelids fluttered. Her nostrils twitched. For a long moment, nothing else happened. Then, as the barn filled with the pale, uncertain light of sunrise, her ear flicked. Barely there, but unmistakable. The foal whinnied, sharp, hopeful, almost joyous. Cole froze, afraid to believe his own eyes. The mare's chest rose in a shaky, uneven breath. She opened her eyes, blinking into the brightness, and nickered softly, a quiet, trembling sound that seemed to fill the whole barn with hope. Cole exhaled, a laugh breaking loose, ragged and bright. The staff grinned. The vet shook his head in disbelief. The foal pressed in, nosing his mother's face, nudging under her chin like a newborn desperate for comfort. The mare turned her head, just a fraction, to nuzzle him back. "Look at you," Cole whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "You did it. Both of you." He stepped back, giving them space, letting the miracle of morning do its work. The vet checked her heartbeat, found it stronger than before. The foal finally began to eat, nibbling at hay as his mother rested. Outside, the storm was gone. Sunlight poured through the windows, golden clean, bathing everything in a promise of survival. Cole let the relief wash over him, felt something break and heal inside his chest. All the nights spent searching, all the guilt and grief, the feeling of being too late or not enough, washed away in the light of a new day. He knelt beside the mare and the foal, voice steady at last. "You showed me how to stay, how to believe. Thank you." In that barn, as dawn broke and a stubborn little Mustang family held on to life, Cole Bennett learned what it meant to hope again. The days that followed the rescue were nothing like the cold eternity of that blizzard night. But they brought their own set of trials, quieter, subtler, and no less critical. At the Glacier Crest Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, the world outside remained blanketed in snow. But inside the barn, life was beginning to return. The battered Mustang mare and her foal were given a stall near the far window, away from the bustle, but close enough to the warmth of the building's heart. Cole Bennett visited every morning before his ranger shift, and every evening when he could, boots leaving wet prints on the barn's concrete floor, the cold always clinging to him a little longer than anyone else. Each time he arrived, he found the foal exactly where he'd left him, pressed tight against his mother, eyes tracking every move the staff made, as if he alone could guarantee her safety. The vet, Dr. Atkins, a stoic man with a soft spot for lost causes, managed the mare's care with a practiced hand. Every day, he cleaned her wounds, checked the splint on her leg, and monitored her vital signs. The frostbite on her ears and legs was severe, and there were days when it seemed infection might win after all. But the mare fought, hour by hour. Sometimes Cole would catch her watching him, her eyes deep and dark and oddly knowing. The staff marveled at the foal's devotion. They'd seen a lot of animals come through, injured deer, orphaned raccoons, even the occasional black bear cub, but never had they witnessed a bond quite like this. The foal refused to leave the mare's side, not even for food or water, unless she ate first. At feeding time, he'd wait patiently, ignoring the alfalfa and oats, watching until his mother took the first tentative mouthful. Only then would he eat, mirroring her every move. One of the staff joked, "He's like her shadow. You'd think he believes if he stops watching, she might disappear." Cole, leaning on the stall door, would sometimes smile, but the truth hit him deeper than he let on. He understood what it meant to be tethered by love, by guilt, by loss, by the kind of loyalty that's almost painful to bear. He'd lived with Jason's memory for so long, clinging to it as a way to honor his brother and punish himself at the same time. Watching the foal, he realized that sometimes the only thing keeping you upright is the need to be there for someone else. The rehab center became a haven not just for the Mustangs, but for Cole as well. When he was there, time seemed to slow down. He'd sit in the quiet, listening to the soft noises of the barn, the gentle whicker of horses, the rustle of straw, the distant drone of a radio somewhere down the hall. He'd talk to the mare and her foal, telling them stories about the mountains, about the things he'd seen and lost, and sometimes hoped to find again. At first, the other animals in the barn seemed to recognize the gravity of what was happening in that stall. Horses in the nearby pens would whinny softly when Cole entered, their ears flicking toward him and the Mustang pair, as if offering encouragement. The staff noticed, too. There was a reverence to the space around the two Mustangs, as though even the humans were reluctant to disturb the fragile miracle unfolding there. The mare's recovery was slow. She spent her first days barely moving, only occasionally lifting her head to nuzzle her foal or sniff at a proffered treat. Her leg was still swollen, and the frostbite took its toll, leaving her ears ragged and her coat patchy. Yet each day her eyes grew brighter, her breathing steadier. The first time she stood on her own, wobbly but determined, the whole barn seemed to hold its breath. The foal bounced at her side, pressing against her as if to lend her his strength. Cole was there that morning, kneeling in the straw, when Dr. Atkins checked her over and finally allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. "She's tougher than most," he said, glancing at Cole. "And so's her boy. I'd say they've both earned another shot at the Wild." The news rippled through the staff, a subtle lifting of spirits. But with hope came new worries. The foal, for all his courage, remained inseparable from his mother. He wouldn't go outside to graze, wouldn't accept treats from anyone but Cole or Dr. Atkins, and still shadowed the mare's every step. Some called it unusual. Cole called it devotion. He remembered how, after Jason's death, he himself had refused to leave his parents' home, afraid that letting go of the familiar would mean letting go of his brother altogether. The staff tried various tricks to encourage the foal to be more independent, tempting him with apples, coaxing him to the corral for short walks, even letting other young horses visit. But nothing worked unless the mare led the way. If she lay down, so did he. If she napped, he stood over her like a sentry, eyes sharp and wary. Cole found himself talking with Dr. Atkins one evening, voices low in the golden light that spilled across the barn floor. "He's not just loyal," Cole said, scratching the foal's chin. "He's afraid. He saw what it's like to lose everything and still hang on. Maybe that's why he can't let go." Dr. Atkins gave a thoughtful nod. "Animals grieve. Most people don't realize how deeply. But what you're seeing, that's more than grief. It's hope. He believes she'll be okay if he just doesn't give up." The words hit Cole harder than he expected. He stayed late that night, watching as the mare drifted to sleep, the foal curled up beside her, warm and safe for the first time in days. Cole realized that hope was a kind of courage, the courage to keep loving, even when the world tries to freeze you out. Outside, spring's promise was just beginning to show. Icicles dripping from the eaves, birds testing the morning with tentative songs, sunlight lasting just a little longer each day. The staff started to talk about release, about the day when mare and foal could return to the wild together. Cole felt a pang at the thought, both pride and sadness mingling in his chest. He knew that loving anything wild meant learning how to let go. But for now, he cherished each quiet moment, every small victory. The foal started to play, just a little, chasing shadows in the straw and kicking up his heels when he thought no one was watching. The mare, her strength returning, would reach over and nuzzle Cole's arm when he entered, a gesture of trust that felt like a blessing. Day by day, they healed together. A ranger, a Mustang mare, and a foal whose loyalty had kept them all alive. In the quiet space of the barn, surrounded by gentle light and the hush of recovery, Cole finally understood what it meant to move forward, not to forget, but to carry the memory of love, even through the coldest winters. Spring arrived in the mountains with a slow, stubborn grace. Snowmelt trickled down from the high ridges, sending ribbons of clear water across the meadows, and filling the air with the scent of wet earth and new grass. In the rehab center's corrals, birdsong replaced the winter silence, and the world seemed to exhale. Finally, at last, the storm was over. Cole Bennett felt the seasons change in his bones. The days grew longer, the sun warmer, and every time he entered the barn, he found the Mustang mare and her foal stronger than before. The mare's limp had eased, her coat sleek again, the frostbitten scars a silent testimony to the winter's fury. The foal, once weak and trembling, now chased the light, tossing his head and bucking with a joy that made Cole laugh out loud. Still, whenever the mare wandered, the foal shadowed her steps, always watching, always close. There was talk among the staff for weeks. When would be the right time for release? Dr. Atkins checked the mare's leg, now healed enough to bear her full weight, and watched her run the length of the corral, the foal matching her stride for stride. "They're ready," he declared one bright morning, his voice gruff but warm. "Wilder than most we've seen. If we keep them here too long, they'll lose what makes them Mustangs." Cole nodded, even as his heart squeezed tight. He'd known this day would come. But it still felt like letting go of something precious, a chapter written in snow and struggle, now giving way to the green promise of spring. He thought of Jason again, his brother's voice teasing in his memory. "You always get too attached, Cole. Gotta let him run sometime." The staff prepared for release with quiet efficiency. The trailer was lined with fresh straw. The tracking tags, lightweight, safe, meant to dissolve after a few months, attached to the mare's mane and the foal's tiny forelock. Cole helped ready their travel kit. A last checkup, a gentle brushdown, whispered encouragement. The foal was skittish, uncertain of the new smells in the open door of the trailer. But the mare stepped in without fear, her head high, trusting Cole and the humans who'd kept her alive. The drive out to the release site took them high into the foothills, where wildflowers splashed color across the hillsides, and the air held the electric possibility of new beginnings. Cole rode in the back with the horses, one hand resting lightly on the foal's withers, the other steadying himself as the road wound upward. He didn't talk much. There was nothing left to say. Every mile brought them closer to the place where survival would be up to them again, not the kindness of men. The sun was low when they arrived, the sky blushing gold and lavender over the rolling expanse of public land. Here, the hills fell away to a valley of green, speckled with sage and wild rose. Herds sometimes passed through, their tracks fresh in the soft earth. Dr. Atkins opened the trailer gate and nodded to Cole, who stepped down into the grass, heart pounding. The mare hesitated at the threshold, ears flicking as she took in the sense of freedom, wind, grass, a distant call of another horse. The foal stood behind her, trembling with excitement and uncertainty. Cole met her gaze, saw the wild wisdom shining there, and smiled. "You know what to do," he said softly. "This is yours again." He reached up and unclipped the tracking tag from her mane, his fingers gentle and slow. The mare didn't flinch. Cole moved to the foal, his hand steady as he removed the tiny tag, careful not to startle him. The foal nickered, a soft, questioning sound that tugged at something deep inside Cole. He stepped back, giving them space. The wind lifted, carrying the sense of the open world, and for a moment, time itself seemed to pause. The mare stepped forward, her first stride hesitant, then surer, each step erasing the memory of pain. The foal followed close, then darted ahead, his hooves barely touching the earth. Cole watched, a bittersweet ache blooming in his chest. He thought about all the nights he'd spent in the cold, all the times he'd doubted himself, all the ghosts he'd tried to outrun. In this moment, he felt them all, the loss, the love, the hard-won hope, braided together in the sight of two wild mustangs reclaiming their place in the world. The mare reached the top of a small rise and paused, her mane tossing in the breeze. The foal, halfway between her and Cole, stopped and looked back. It was just a heartbeat, a single, suspended moment. The foal's eyes found Cole's, wide and wondering, as if asking, "Will you be all right now?" Cole knelt, hands resting on his knees, and nodded. "Go on, little guy. You've got this." The foal flicked his ears, hesitated, then turned and galloped to his mother's side. The pair stood together at the crest of the hill, silhouettes against the setting sun. For a long, quiet moment, Cole watched as they surveyed their world, free, fierce, and whole. Then, with a toss of her head, the mare led the way, and the foal followed her into the sea of grass, disappearing between the trees. The staff stood in respectful silence, hats in hand, watching the mustangs become wild shapes in the dusk. Dr. Atkins clapped Cole on the shoulder. "Good work, Ranger. Sometimes letting go is the hardest thing we do." Cole didn't answer at first. He stared at the empty hilltop, listening to the faintest echo of hoofbeats, feeling the wildness linger in the air. Then he stood, brushed the dust from his jeans, and smiled. A real smile, the kind that starts in your chest and pushes out all the old pain. He knew the mountains would always hold their ghosts. He knew that not every story had a happy ending. But today, there had been a miracle, a stubborn foal, a battered mare, and a ranger who learned, finally, that staying and letting go could mean the same thing. He took one last look at the wild hills, breathed deep, and turned back towards the road. The mustangs were free, and so, in a way, was he. A few weeks after the release, the high snows began to recede for good, and the old winter's grip loosened its hold on Glacier Crest. The river valley was alive again. Creeks ran fast and bright, birds made quick work of the spring thaw, and tufts of new grass shot up along the trails. In the mornings, mist hugged the foothills before melting into the blue. It was the kind of wild, raw beauty that had always drawn Cole Bennett back, no matter how much pain or memory the mountains carried. Today, Cole found himself standing again at the edge of the old ridge, near the spot where it had all begun. The scar from the blizzard lingered, a hollow in the snow, a patch where the earth had been dug out and trampled by frantic hooves. It was quieter than he remembered. No storms, no wind, just the hush of spring and the far-off rattle of a woodpecker in the pines. He walked the ground slowly, his boots leaving new prints next to the faint remains of the old ones. Every so often he stopped and crouched, fingers brushing the earth, where weeks ago a foal's tracks had staggered and faltered, where hope had almost been lost. There was a sadness to the place, but it was gentle now, like a bruise fading from memory. He let himself remember, fully and honestly, the blizzard's roar, the feel of the mare's cold skin under his hands, the stubborn spark in the foal's eyes, and his own voice in the wind, promising not to leave them behind. He'd spent so long running from ghosts, Jason's most of all, that he'd almost forgotten what it meant to stay. Yet, here he was, returned to the scene, no longer chased by regret, but drawn instead by gratitude. For a long moment, Cole knelt in the soft mud, his hand pressed to the earth as if searching for a pulse beneath the ground. Something caught his eye, a line of fresh hoofprints, small and neat, pressed into the damp soil along the game trail. Not old either. Cole followed them with slow, deliberate steps, his heart thumping. Maybe they belonged to another wild band. Or maybe, just maybe, they were from the two souls he'd fought so hard to save. He tracked the prints through a patch of new wildflowers, past a fallen tree, to a clearing at the forest's edge. There, the grass was cropped close, and a tuft of mustang hair snagged on a branch fluttered in the morning breeze. Cole crouched, running the strand between his fingers, feeling an odd, fierce joy. Even in all this wildness, he could still find a sign, a reminder that some stories, if you're lucky, don't end so much as circle back to where you began. He let out a slow breath, the cool air filling his lungs. There were lessons in every step, every print, every hard night survived. He thought about the foal, the smallest soul, outlasting the storm, leading him not just to a wounded mare, but to something inside himself he thought he'd lost. In the wild, there are no guarantees, no clean resolutions. Sometimes you save a life, sometimes you just bear witness. But this time, courage had come in a form he hadn't expected. 4 trembling hooves, a stubborn refusal to leave, and a love that survived the coldest night. He stayed there for a long while, just listening, the wind in the grass, the distant call of a jay, the sound of his own breath settling. It was peaceful, not lonely. The grief that had followed him for years had softened, turned into something quieter, more manageable. He missed Jason, he always would, but he realized, at last, that letting go didn't mean forgetting. Sometimes, letting go was the only way to make room for a new life, for new hope. Cole stood, brushing dirt from his jeans. He looked around, trying to memorize every detail, the way the sunlight broke through the branches, the flash of a deer disappearing into the shadows, the lingering impression of hoofprints that told a story words never could. He took out his phone, snapped a photo of the tracks, and sent it to the rehab center. Dr. Atkins replied almost immediately, "Might be our miracle pair. They look good, wild as ever." Cole smiled, tucking the phone away. Some things were meant to be free. On the walk back down the ridge, Cole felt lighter, as if a part of him had been left behind, buried with the last of the snow, replaced by something steadier. He stopped one more time near the spot where he'd found the foal that night. Kneeling, he whispered to the wind, "You showed me what it means to stay, and what it means to let go." His words vanished, carried off by the breeze, but he felt them settle in his heart. He knew he'd be back. There would always be new rescues, new storms, and maybe every now and then a miracle waiting in the snow. He'd learned the mountain's hardest lesson. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision to keep going, to stay by someone's side through the worst of it, to believe that hope can survive even in the coldest dark. Back at the trailhead, Cole found the rehab staff waiting for him, the truck engine running, steaming in the morning air. They waved, grinning, and Cole felt a kinship stronger than any he'd known before. People who understood that the wild had its own rules, and that love was as much a survival tool as grit or gear. He loaded up his pack, ready to head out on another patrol. Before climbing in, he turned to the camera one last time, voice steady and full of quiet conviction. See, you showed me what it means to stay and what it means to let go. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's four hooves in a blizzard. Even the smallest souls can carry the greatest love. And sometimes we're not the ones doing the saving. He smiled, letting the words linger. Like, if you believe animals feel more than we understand, share. If you've ever witnessed loyalty in the wild. And subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to care. The mountains stretched behind him, wild and endless, and Cole Bennett stepped forward, not as a man running from the past, but as someone ready to meet the future, come whatever storm might follow.